Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig Webinars, our endeavor to empower techies. Today's session is 8th in the webinar series on cloud computing, giving insights into cloud implementation scenarios for enterprise. We are delighted to have Mr. Shankar Verma, Practice Manager at Yash Technologies with us today. Shankar is an enterprise solution architect with over 17 years of industry experience, mainly in strategic IT consulting, enterprise and solution architectures, service delivery strategies, service line deployment, IT outsourcing engagements, and business development. Shankar is having a broad technical exposure in Microsoft enterprise products and frameworks around enterprise portals and content management, EAI, SOA, and mobile cloud-based technologies. Gentlemen, we also have Mr. Sameer Bhagat with us today. Mr. Sameer is Service Line Offering Manager at Yash Technologies and would also be supporting this session. This presentation will continue for the next 45 minutes and we'll take your questions after this presentation. In the meanwhile, you can post your queries through the chat pane available in the webinar software. I introduce you to our guest speaker, Mr. Shankar.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar on cloud computing strategies and implementation scenarios. This is the second part of the series, and in the first part, we are seeing what is cloud computing and different components of cloud computing in terms of key drivers, service models, and deployment models. We'll try to understand the hype and the technical jargon associated with the cloud computing, and we've seen that cloud is not necessarily a technical. Or it's a fad, as other people say. It has the potential to help the companies improve their service levels while improving their TCO and ROI figures. We are also seeing that the current adoption levels of the industry, where we found that cloud computing is at the top of CIO's priority list, and the current penetration levels are good in terms of SaaS-based services around CRM, ERP, and HCM solutions. And further to that, we are seeing most organizations are interested in cloud because of the soft benefits like reach, mobility, and fixed provisioning over other promises like elasticity and CapEx to OpEx transformation. We also discussed on how to build a suitable IT strategy around cloud computing, taking into consideration parameters like current IT maturity levels of the organization and organization's cloud readiness. We have also seen some of the adoption scenarios and industry success stories. Finally, we discussed on how to get the management buy-in by building a fitting business case around the strategy and what are the points to consider in building the business case. In today's webinar, we will cover implementation scenarios, starting with overall program planning on implementation, overall program planning to implementation stabilization and optimization. We are splitting this webinar into 3 parts, starting with overall program planning for better cloud migration. Then we'll move on to the cloud implementation scenarios. Finally, we'll have a look at how to optimize the cloud implementations for effective results. Again, this webinar is primarily focused on mid-level managers and IT consultants who are working on implementing cloud programs in their organizations or for their clients. And in the previous webinar, we are seeing questions on vendor-specific implementation scenarios like Amazon Web Services or Azure, etc. So let me tell you, this webinar is mostly concentrated on strategic aspects. We request you to drop your vendor-specific implementation questions at the email ID shared at the end of the webinar. So we'll be responding back at the end of the webinar. Let's get started. So our first section is going to be on the program management. In this session, we will see how to manage the overall cloud program in terms of the overall program and project planning, building suitable strategies for portfolio optimization with the cloud. While we'll also look into various parameters like portfolio prioritization and optimization. So let me start with the overall program management framework. It is the outline program management framework for cloud adoption. And if you really look at it, it is broadly split into three main components in terms of planning, implementation, and optimization. So in this planning basically focuses on how to define an executable model for the cloud adoption, which is in line with the overall cloud adoption roadmap, which we have seen in the first part of the webinar. So in the first part of the webinar, we defined a roadmap in terms of near-term, short-term, and long-term plan, and our program management planning should be in line with that cloud adoption roadmap. As a part of the planning, we need to consider different aspects like current IT portfolio in terms of like what is the infrastructure that we are having, what are the applications and solution services, what is the type of storage and related devices, along with the current IT service delivery models, associated service level agreements, processes, procedures, governance policies that are in place to support the delivery model. And we need to see how these things need to be transformed as we go about implementing or adopting the cloud. And based upon the service level needs and IT roadmap, we need to analyze the portfolio and create the candidate systems, which will create candidate systems based on a specific priority matrix. We will see how to build what this priority matrix is, how to build this matrix, and in the next part of the slide. So we need to identify the candidate systems based upon the priority matrix, and based upon that, we need to build the overall program scope. While building the program scope, we need to take into consideration the factors like the overall budget, time frame, resources, skill needs, and also need to identify the suitable projects around the defined program line, so that if we execute the projects, we should be able to realize the benefits of the program goals. So once we have the program plan in place, the next step is the execution. And before we move on to the implementation or execution phase of it, let me tell you, for better risk management and control over the program, it is always suggested that we execute the program in an iterative fashion. Wherein what we can do is we can have multiple spirals of planning, implementation, and optimization, so that at the end of each spiral, we can really look at the overall benefits of the current spiral that we executed, so that we can optimize, we can reassess our current strategy and optimize our program plan. So let's talk about the implementation aspects. Basically, the implementation or execution addresses how the overall program management plan is going to get executed, addressing the scope and the associated constraints. When I talk about constraints, it may be like the time factors, the resource availability constraints, or the budgets, etc., etc. So the execution basically includes formulating various projects which are in line with our program goal. And when we are thinking about implementation, the first for any technology, one of the critical aspects that we need to consider is how the technology is going to transform the current IT landscape. IT landscape in terms of the current solution portfolio, or the IT organization structure, associated processes and governances, and what are the various risks associated with it, and how our various stakeholders are getting impacted. So the program management team need to keep track of all these parameters and need to so that they can evolve a better plan over the time as we are running through different iterations. And also for better risk management, it is always recommended to identify the candidate systems and build suitable POCs around various high risk and business critical components, so that we can collect the metrics out of those executions, and we can analyze those metrics, and we can take necessary course correction steps and address these to improve. And addressing these metrics will help us in improving overall program success. And also during the implementation phase, one should not really forget about the management reporting. This is another critical factor. We need to keep the management informed on overall progress, overall program progress, so that the program budgets will keep flowing in. So once we have the execution, once we executed, once we are done with the implementation, the next phase is we need to stabilize and optimize whatever the implementations that we have done during the previous phase. As we discussed, it is always ideal to plan the executions in iterations, where each iteration is running through the stabilization and optimization phase, as whereby we can create opportunity for the program management team to reassess the situation and to necessary course corrections. During the optimization of the overall program or the program iteration, we need to try to measure the value that is delivered of the previous program execution in association with the overall strategy roadmap and the business direction. So here we are talking about the business direction because in this agile world, what's happening most of the time, the business strategies keep changing or the business strategies keep evolving as the organizations need to keep in pace with the changing market conditions. So we need to make sure that as a part of optimization phase, we are constantly reassessing our current strategy, and we are making sure that our strategies are in line with the business, the overall business goals. Also, we need to make sure that the implementation, whatever the implementation that we have done during the previous iteration, is being properly controlled by building and enforcing various policies in the form of governance models, which need to be constantly monitored through proper compliance and audit models. So what we do is, as we go along this webinar, we will look into the details of each of these aspects of the program management.
Following up on what Shankar said, so the first stage of the program management is the planning stage. So in this we do a detailed planning for the cloud implementation. And in that, the first and most critical part of planning the implementation is to perform a portfolio analysis of your existing IT systems. This will typically involve evaluating your existing application portfolio, including your ERP, HCM, supply chain management systems, and similar other enterprise applications. This is in addition to your overall technical portfolio, which will include your servers, desktops, storage systems, and other infrastructure components. The IT portfolio is typically evaluated based on certain criteria, such as technical health, business value, cost of operations. As you can see in the tables below, for assessing the technical health of a particular application, you need to consider several factors, such as how secure the application is it able to scale based on your growing business needs, how complex is the application code and its interface, how easy it is to maintain, and similar other things. Similarly, for understanding the business value that the application delivers, you need to consider factors such as its level of support for business objectives, the existing business processes, and does the application provide us a competitive differentiation, and how mission critical it is for us. Similarly, we have the cost components where you consider the different cost components associated with the application, be it in terms of hardware, software licenses, and the long-term support and maintenance costs. Apart from analyzing the IT portfolio, you also need to look at the ongoing project portfolio in terms of which projects are getting executed, and at the same time look at the demand for new applications and functionality to get an overall view of the existing cloud opportunities. Based on this analysis, you can identify candidate applications and infrastructure that can be migrated to cloud. And among them, you can identify very specific opportunities. Those are like quick wins that you can immediately go ahead with. How you specifically do it is covered in this particular slide. As we discussed,
sorry for interrupting.
Technical health, business value.
Hello? Your voice is not audible. Can you please be closer to the mic?
Okay. Is it better now?
It's better now. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Hello. Is it better now?
Please go ahead.
Okay. So as we discussed about the parameters such as technical health, business value, cost, and their associated sub-parameters. Now we'll see how you can use these parameters to make your specific cloud decisions. Typically, we use a scoring mechanism to rate each of the sub-parameters on a certain scale. The scale can be like 1 to 5, 1 to 10, from a low to high basis. And based on this, you do a qualitative assessment and give scores to each of the parameters. And then using the scores, you get the overall scores for technical health, business value, etc. based on a weighted average basis. And based on the scores, then you position the applications in a 2x2 graph as is displayed. With this exercise, what you can do is you can identify if there are any new opportunities to deploy IT assets on cloud or opportunities to redeploy an existing asset on the cloud. As you can see in the graph, in the leftmost corner, it's like there are applications with bad technical health and relatively high cost. This can be ideal candidates for completely retiring them if the need is not there for that particular application. Or instead you can look at retiring them and look for a SaaS alternative if the application functionality is still required.
So once we have some clear idea about what are the application portfolio that we have and what is the health of each of those applications, the next step is to build a prioritization matrix. And this is here is the graphic that indicates the prioritization matrix. So if you really look at it, there are multiple decision parameters that we need to consider in terms of the nature of the application, the service delivery needs, and the accessibility, etc., etc. And these parameters may basically vary depending upon the organization's current IT portfolio and the service delivery models. So if you look at it from the graphic, in the first segment, if you really look at it, it is more sensitive. It says that it is more sensitive for us if the application to use something like on-premises solution when your application is more is hosting more sensitive data, or it is more it needs compliance. Sorry. So what we are seeing from the graphic is, so if your application is more sensitive in terms of data or is more compliance oriented, then it is always suggested to keep the application under the IT control and go for something like on-premise solutions, or otherwise go for something like public or private clouds. So similarly, if you are talking from the service needs, it is like a mixed model, and it is more debatable in terms of whether should I tend towards my own infrastructure or should I go towards public infrastructure. Again, we need to take a balanced view based upon the organization needs and service delivery models. From the user accessibility point, again, it depends on more from the geographic distribution and what are the localization needs that we need for the given scenario. Let's say if you are talking about application where we need a lot of where you have a distributed set of users. So in that scenario, it may be more ideal to look for a provider who got better local presence in terms of geographies, and also bring local advantage to the service offerings, so that it will be much easier for the users to adopt. Like for example, if I had to take a CRM-based solutions where where my marketing guys are located in different continents, I need the solution to be internationalized for different languages and translations and all. Then I should look for more of a SaaS-based model which provides the language translation along with internationalization and cultural implementations. And also the service provider has data centers in different geographies so that my service latency is also being taken care of. Now, as I'm saying, this particular matrix is need to be defined for a given organization depending upon the service needs, and what are the parameters that really get into these things varies depending upon multiple parameters. And this service matrix is going to help us throughout the program planning and implementation and optimization, as well as governance, to make right decisions in terms of which project or which particular service line need to be migrated to the cloud in terms of public clouds or private clouds, and which particular portfolio items need to be hosted in premise.
Let me try to explain these with a few examples from different industries. Now you consider the financial industry, the bank transaction system or the brokerage systems that investment management firms use. They are typically mission critical and core to their business, as you can see in the topmost parameters. And typically the customer data that's available on it is very sensitive. So in this case, maintaining the application in-house will be a better option than putting it on a public or private cloud. And if the system goes down in these cases, the financial services firms lose out on their revenue stream. So that means that it is very critical, and because of that, they might even lose their important customers. On the other hand, if you're starting a new office, say in one of the emerging economies, such as India, China, or some place, and want to deploy basic office applications and collaboration tools for the few employees that are located there, then you can look at cloud options such as Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, or Google Apps, which can serve the purpose. In this case, the need for availability is low, since it is not very mission critical, but at the same time it should be able to scale up quickly, because as I expand my office and as I expand my employees within the office, I need to make sure that the more number of employees, the application is still able to support that. Similarly, for each industry and functional groups within our organization, the needs can be varied. You need to take all these factors into consideration when you are identifying candidate opportunities for cloud. Moving on to the next slide, here we are putting together some specific examples, some scenarios in which you can decide between using on-premises, public or private cloud. So in this table, you can see that it is better to have your mission critical applications on-premise, such as your ERP or as I said, the core banking systems, etc. Whereas for other opportunities such as e-commerce, data warehousing, your enterprise content management, which are likely to have moderate business criticality. It's not very high critical, but moderate kind of business criticality. And they also have a high availability need, because I need to make sure that my e-commerce application is always strong. So this kind of applications you can explore private cloud within the enterprise. On the other hand, for some non-strategic opportunities, such as deploying your Web 2.0 applications or your R&D, research and development kind of applications, you can look at exploring public cloud opportunities.
Okay, as we are done with the overall program plan, and we have some idea about our overall application portfolio, and we have prioritized our applications for cloud movement. So we'll move on to the next section, which is on cloud implementation. In this section, we'll try to find answers to the questions like how cloud is going to affect my overall enterprise landscape, what are the key challenges involved in it in accordance with the current technology, and how cloud is going to evolve over the time. So let's start with the first part, that's on the enterprise landscape. So the key question for any organization when it comes to technology adoption is how it is going to impact my overall enterprise footprint. So here we are trying to put in a conceptual meta model depicting the key components of the enterprise landscape. So if you really look at it, at the bottom of the stack, we have infrastructure components in terms of hardware, servers, storage, networking, etc., which are being over which we have enterprise service components in terms of operation support systems and business support systems, which may be at the low level, your relational databases and OLAP cubes, followed by your business processes in the depending upon your business area, and followed by the specific enterprise systems like HCM, ERP, CRM, etc., etc. Now, both these components, they generally form the core component, the core of the IT services. And the core of the IT service delivery. And based on these components, IT services strive to address the challenges like capacity management, availability, and the overall configuration management, incident and problem resolution, etc. And based upon IT maturity levels, in our organization may have something like service catalogs, so which will give some level of flexibility. And these components are vertically being supported by systems like security, where we talk about where we have identity management, single sign-on, data protection, intrusion detection, etc., and some sort of manageability components which IT would take help of to handle event management, configuration compliance, that type of services. And definitely IT would be needing a lot of automation to make sure that all these things are working towards the central goal of delivering an effective IT service. So all these components in the bottom three layers of the stack, generally tend towards delivering the user support, which may be in terms of enterprise portals or the web presence. So here in this model, what we are doing, we are talking about here in this model, we are keeping the line of business solutions and business processes and the second layer of the stack, because here what happens is most of the time most of the users would be using these applications depending upon their day-to-day functional areas. But if you really look at the current trend, where the ITs are trying towards building a sort of unified single window experience for the organization-wide data needs, where the data is served to the user based upon the current user context, whether it may be in terms of self-service desks or in terms of enterprise collaboration, like 2.0 features, or workflow capabilities, enterprise search capabilities, executive dashboards, or in terms of the web presence, like the corporate sites, product catalogs, product promotions, e-commerce, etc., etc. So what we are trying to drive from this graphic is that now if you look at this overall model, IT is responsible for managing the complete service delivery stack, which means that IT organizations need to be very heavily staffed and need to own a lot of infrastructure, which generally results in huge capital expenditure. And also along with that, IT would be most of the time preoccupied in making sure that this total mechanism is up and running, in terms of making sure that the incident management and problem resolution is being properly handled, and it would be spending most of the time in making sure that service levels are in control. But as an organization starts evolving and starts transforming into cloud-based models, now what happens is, in this slide we will see now how the IT is going to transform with information as a service model. So here in this scenario, IT can think about moving some of its hardware components, something like the processors which don't require like so as we bring in this information as a service, now what will happen is IT can start thinking about moving some of its hardware components onto the cloud. Something like some of the processes which are not so business sensitive, or areas where you need a lot of storage capabilities for storing content and media. So with this, what happens is, as the model is now, as applications are hosted on the public infrastructure, this may reduce the burden in terms of data center costs and help in quick hardware provisioning. But this model is just limited here. It is not moving further, but still the IT organization need to take the responsibility of the overall applications, overall application stack in terms of enterprise solutions. So for that, we can look for something like platform as a service model. That is the next level of adoption, where the total platform, which includes the hardware and associated software like operating systems, application servers, middleware components, etc., are moved onto the cloud. So in this scenario, what happens is now your total first and second level stack can be supported by your cloud components. So wherein you can think about moving your total database onto the cloud, or think about moving your business processes onto the cloud, or moving your backend support systems onto the cloud. But again, in this model, what happens is now your application is available on the cloud, and your cloud service provider is supporting the application, which means that your service levels and your instance management, problem resolution, all these things are lying with the cloud service provider. But still, when it comes to the core customization of the applications or enhancing the business services of the application, or areas like configuration management, release and build management, they still need to be managed by the IT organization. As we move on to the next model, where we are trying to adapt software as a service. In this, what happens is now your cloud is totally providing the software, which means the hardware, the underlying associated application software, everything is available to the cloud. You just need to find out what are the suitable, who is the suitable service provider for your specific area, and you can start directly using their services. And it really provides you the flexibility in terms of quickly provisioning the services. Something like now, let us say you want some employee self-services or recruitment-based services. You can go with somebody like ADP or Taleo, and you can start using the service. Or if you want an executive dashboard, you can just simply hook your executive dashboard. You can provision your executive dashboard on the cloud and hook your data source to it, and your application is up and running. Or something like you want to create your partner collaboration or product promotion. So you always have these software as a service solutions available on the cloud. You can just simply get these things, and you will be up and running. So in this model, what happens is even your configuration management and the release management are also being taken care by the service provider. You don't need to think about what are the enhancements that are required, or how adding more features of the service delivery side. So most of the time, what these service providers do is they provide these services as enhancements or something like feature packages. Just by subscribing for a particular feature package, that feature will be up and running for you. So this way, the total service organization responsibility will come down. But at the same time, so as I was talking about, with this, what happens is the flexibility of the service delivery will improve. Now, most of the areas are there with the cloud, whether in terms of your IT infrastructure, or in terms of your backend support systems, or in terms of your front-ending systems. They are available on the cloud. So with this, what happens is availability management, capacity configuration, service level management, incident management, everything is managed by the service provider. And the IT organization simply need to work with the cloud manageability services, which is in terms of self-service provisioning, where I can just simply go and take more services or features on a given model, or I can look at the consumption metrics, or look at the metrics in terms of how the service the consumption features are, or what are the service levels at this point, and whether my service provider is supporting my current business users to the optimal level or not. So that this way I need to I will get more flexibility, and I can concentrate on building advanced service catalogs wherein I can provide the service to my business units in terms of business units coming and selecting specific services from the catalog, which can be directly provisioned in very quick time to market scenarios. But again, all this flexibility is available in a limited scenario with the current cloud technologies. So with the current models, what happens is, let's say now if you want to build an end-to-end integrated solution, so wherein think about a scenario where you are hosting your CRM solution with Salesforce.com, and you have a homegrown e-commerce solution which is hosted as on a platform as a service model, while other software as a service model is used for shipping and logistics. And your total media is hosted media in terms of your product brochures or demo videos, etc. They are hosted on the cloud with the storage provider. And you want to build an end-to-end business to customer model around these components. It's really going to be a big nightmare, because in the current model, what's happening is today cloud is running more as a siloed model, wherein if you want to integrate all these components together, like you want to integrate all these components together, your cloud federation is always going to be challenged in terms of like how are you going to where are you going to maintain your identity? How is the single sign-on is going to happen between your systems? Let's say your front-end system is trying to access a video from your storage provider. What is the user on which the front-end system is going to access the storage provider? So these things are really becoming a big challenge today because of lack of standards in terms of the cloud adoption. And these challenges are also compounding the issue of switching between the cloud providers. Now let us say I have all my CRM data is my total CRM data is with Salesforce.com, and tomorrow for some reason I want to move to some other cloud provider. It's not going to be such an easy scenario in today's world. So as I was talking about, these are basically the current technology challenges. So if you want to adopt the cloud, like the cloud federation, where you want to, if you want to interface your cloud with the on-premise solution, or you want to integrate your cloud services or cloud components hosted with different service providers, or you want to implement identity management through single sign-on, or you want to do something like single point user provisioning, or implement access policy management. All these things are going to be challenging in today's model. And definitely, as I was talking about migrating the data, whether it's in terms of the media or it's in terms of the transactional data, if I want to migrate from one of my vendor to the other vendor, it's going to be a problem. And most of the people say that business continuity is not going to be a problem with cloud-based models, but business continuity is not a model as long as my vendor is taking care of it. But what if the scenario we already discussed about it? What if my service provider is going to bankrupt or is getting out of the business? How am I going to get the data out of that vendor and more to the vendor? So these are going to be the major challenges. And as we go along, to address these challenges, cloud needs to evolve into a model where anything we talk about should be available on the cloud. And this is possible only with open frameworks and standards. So wherein how the identity or how the different components are on the cloud are going to federate, how the identity is going to be federated between the systems. are need to be addressed with these open frameworks and standards. So once these standards are available, then we have something called a true cloud model evolving. With this, we'll have seamless opportunities to migrate to the cloud and moving between the providers, like the way we do without telephone service providers today. Of course, with the level of adoption we are seeing these days, the technical gurus think that this is going to happen sooner than later.
So Shankar discussed about the different architecture models and what are the aspects to consider. One of the most important things that you'll be doing once you have decided to move to cloud will be to select your vendor and the specific products. So this will typically involve selecting your cloud service provider, maybe your SaaS, PaaS or IaaS solution. But at the same time, there are vendors that are providing cloud management platforms to manage your cloud. So selecting your cloud providers, you first of all need to create a list of the criteria based on which you are going to evaluate the vendor. This criteria can include the ability of the vendor solution to scale based on your future needs or your peak loads. The security standards followed by vendors is another criteria. If you want a solution to integrate with your existing system, then you can obviously add that as a criteria. Based on all these criteria, you can then solicit the necessary information from the vendors and then do a one-to-one comparison of the vendors to identify who is the best vendor for your need. Similarly, if you are looking for solutions to help manage your cloud infrastructure, you can look at a cloud management solution that is provided by several vendors that are shown. They're like RightScale, Enstrap, etc. Such solutions can basically provide you the ability to provision, monitor, scale, as well as manage your overall cloud deployment. It also provides the ability to govern the cloud solution in terms of managing the security aspects, auditing requirements, and the reporting and budgeting. So moving on to the next slide. So these are some of the key questions that we thought you should be asking your vendor when it comes to selecting your vendor. So the first criteria will be the technology strengths of the vendor. So you need to understand what is the provider's overall technology roadmap for the future, and does it matches with your expected requirements for the future. And how long will it take to set up the product, go live? And similarly, there are other factors such as the ability to customize, the ability to integrate with your existing systems, and the scalability, the ability to port your data from the provider to someone else. Similarly, there are security related questions that you should be asking about what is the provider's access control authentication methods used, what are the data protection techniques used, the overall architecture, and have they been subscribed or do they have any kind of third-party security standard certifications? What is the level of documentation available so that someone who's looking to audit the system can do that? Similarly, there are other factors such as cost and SLAs related to the service provider's solution. So you need to ask the provider questions about the pricing, licensing, and billing conditions. So some service providers in the SaaS world operate based on the number of users, or some operate based on the number of transactions that are done. So you need to understand that and see how it fits with your requirement. And then you also need to look at the provider's SLA adherence track record, because everyone promises 99%, but do they actually have they consistently met that numbers? And if not, have they been paying penalty for non-adherence to the SLAs? And the most important thing will be to assist your provider's business continuity and disaster recovery plans, because since you're giving the control of your data and your applications to the service provider, you need to make sure that no matter what happens, the application should be up and running all the time, or at least most of the time. And similarly, the other soft factors will be the training and support that is being provided by the provider. So does the provider actually provide training to your IT teams and end users about the features of the product, and how good they are in terms of customer service and support record?
So having seen like what are the how the IT technology landscape is getting transformed with the implementation, and we have different vendors, and we have selected the vendors. Now we'll move on to the final part of the presentation, the transformation and the optimization. So now we have started implementing the cloud strategy and incrementally going on the roadmap. So there are certain changes that that we need to bring into our IT organization. Now we need to constantly assess and refine our roadmap by optimizing the cloud migration costs, cloud portfolio remapping as the cloud technology evolves in order to maximize the benefits. So in this section, we are going to look at the key areas like how IT organization needs to be realigned, and how to implement effective IT governance for better management, better monitoring and controlling of cloudification activities, and how to optimize the benefits by constantly measuring ROI and making necessary adjustments to the cloud roadmap.
Yes, so as Shankar mentioned, there are certain things that need to change within your IT organization. So as you're looking to transform your IT with cloud computing, these are the changes that you need to make your IT organization so that you can start realizing the true value of cloud. As you start working with multiple vendors, be it for this software as a service or infrastructure as a service, and this is typically in addition to the existing on-premise vendors that you're already working with, and even maybe with the IT outsourcing companies that you're working with, like Infosys. So in this case, managing all those different vendors can become a very complex activity, and it will require some bit of skills in terms of evaluating the vendors and negotiating contracts with them. Because what happens is when you're working with so many vendors, there will be a lot of interdependency between the vendors, because a certain application that a vendor is supporting might be running on an infrastructure that is supported by another vendor. So in case the application goes down, and who's going to be responsible for it? So these are the kind of questions that you need to be able to answer when you're looking at implementing cloud alongside your other solutions. So at the same time, as we talked about SLAs, so once you go with cloud, you also need to be able to monitor or audit and make sure that the SLAs are enforced. And as I mentioned, that as you're working with multiple vendors, there will be a lot of interdependency. So you should be able to work with all the vendors, make them work together in a way that you can appeal to this code. So you need to manage all this interdependency, and then also measure and report the security breaches, whatever happens. Similarly, moving on to the next point about financial management, as your IT organization looks to move from a cost-centric model to a profit-centric model, there are several aspects of the financial management that you need to be aware of and actually start implementing. It can actually be in terms of the ability to analyze the vendor's financial stability, by analyzing their balance sheet and understanding the risk of bankruptcy. Another key will be the ability to plan your IT budgets. Now in a predominantly on-premise kind of model, most of the cost components were fixed, where you already had invested in the hardware, software, and the people that support this infrastructure are like fixed; they don't change that much. So in this case, it was much easier to plan your budget. You can just look at what are the plans, business plans, and based on that plan your budget. But after adopting cloud, a large part of your expenses are going to be operating expenses, as we have been saying. So the typical nature of operating expenses is that it can be variable in nature. So therefore, when you are planning your budget, you need to have the ability to analyze the past demand patterns and what the future demand expectations, so that you can plan your budget more accurately. Similarly, your IT organizations might be having a program management office to manage your ongoing IT projects. So now that you have cloud in your project portfolio, the process now needs to incorporate cloud, so that whenever you are managing or whenever you are identifying opportunities or new projects, etc., you need to proactively look for where we can use cloud in this particular project. So that's again going to be a critical skill, and so your PMO needs to take that into consideration whenever they are managing the project portfolios. And at the same time, service management, as I mentioned, is going to be a very critical skill. So in this case, you need to not only be able to make sure that SLAs are enforced, etc., but you need to be able to provide a service catalog of your IT services, which will include your cloud services, so that your end users can directly go and look at what are the IT services available and subscribe to it. And they get the demand information and the service usage information, how frequently they are using, and monitor the cost associated with it. And at the same time, you need to be able to understand how satisfied are the end users with the implementations. And apart from that, with cloud, what is going to happen is that there needs to be a lot more of cultural changes that needs to happen within the IT organizations. Because as I said, if you are looking to proactively go and identify opportunities for cloud projects, there will be certain projects across business units that you might want to club. So in these cases, you will need a lot of teamwork and cooperation between different business units, between different functions within the organization. So breaking down the organization silos and promoting that kind of cooperation is going to be a critical change that you need to bring within your not only your IT organization but in your overall business organization.
Further to the planning for the transformation, we also need to understand that while cloud is helping us in achieving quick results and helping in rapid transformation, IT organization without effective monitoring and control, I think it's like we are setting up a failure. We need to define effective governance models that will empower the steering committees to always reassess the situation and steer the direction of the overall program for optimum results. So when you talk about IT governance is a very vast subject with a lot of different standards available in terms of ITIL, COVID, ISO standards like 38,500 or 27,001, etc. But the specific details and the implementation aspects of this of this governance models depends upon the service delivery models of the organization and organization's current maturity levels. So instead of getting into the low-level details of each of the IT governance model, what we thought is we'll broadly classify into 5 different segments and we'll concentrate on those areas which need to be very carefully monitored and controlled for optimal results from the cloud engagements. So the first and the foremost thing is strategic alignment. As we always say, your IT strategy should always be aligned with your business goals. And your roadmap and migration paths are always aligned to your IT strategy. So while doing that, we need to have effective program governance, and we need to take into executive priorities into consideration. And we need to make sure that the top level vision is always oriented towards the organization strategy. And this is for to control these things, we need to have a strong monitoring and control mechanism in place, which is in terms of a governance council, a set of people who are empowered by the management to assess the current situation and define the policies and procedures, enforce compliance through audits and control, and make sure that they have the right budgets, and budgets are being controlled through effective project and program selections. And if there are any midterm variations or any deviations, they have been properly controlled, and risk is always been mitigated. And these guys should always and this should be driven through a specific value chain in terms of what is the service model that we are working on, and what are the service catalogs which we are offering to the business, and the service levels we are agreeing on, and the types of different security models and policies, so that the value is very effectively delivered to the business. And these things need to be optimized through effective and well-maintained business blueprints, enterprise solution blueprints, best practices, effective change control, and release and build management, proper technological choices, understanding the synergy between different cloud activities in the organization, and building proper adoption patterns so that we don't have to again and again reinvent the wheel. That are always the best practices and knowledge is being taken into consideration while we are starting on a new project or a program. All these things should be properly controlled through an effective program management or project management office with proper portfolio optimization and rationalization, taking into consideration of the current constraints in terms of the budgets, risks, and resource capabilities and technical competencies. So in the first part, so for the governance, we need to also see and should be able to constantly measure the benefits of the cloud. In the first part, we are seeing how do we do the cost-based analysis of our cloud computing strategy. So which we incorporated in our business case, and we presented to the management saying that if you are getting this budget, this is what we will be realizing. So we need to have a proper mechanism in terms of measuring the value that we are getting out of the cloud adoption programs at the overall program level and at each of the spiral release level. So this might be in terms of the given projections, and this might be in terms of the ROI, reduced ROI or improved, or reduced TCO or improved ROI or better soft benefits in terms of business acceptance, IT agility, better user adaptation, etc. And we need to make sure that these are always in line with the business case that we have presented, that we have defined and presented to the management to make sure that the program is on and is incrementally delivering the results.
Yeah, so Shankar mentioned that you need to make sure that whatever benefits you had promised to the management at the start of the engagement, you need to be able to deliver it and continuously monitor whether the value is actually being delivered to the business or not. So in this case, we had actually mentioned in our last webinar as well that there will be certain hard benefits which are much easier to quantify. Because you can see that there are factors that you have considered here, such as reduction in your physical servers and their cost savings, and reduction in the licensing and upgrade costs. So these are the kind of cost components that are going to be much easier to quantify because you can actually compare it with your last year cost and what are you going to spend this year, and then based on that come up with the dollar figures for this. But there are other benefits that are much softer and are slightly harder to quantify. So in this case, what we have done is we have kind of put a model in by which you can actually try to quantify them. So in this case, you first look at a particular scenario of a retail industry in which they are trying to automate the order to cash process using cloud solutions. So in this case, the kind of benefits that they will be expecting is in terms of cost efficiency, because they are able to deliver the products to the customers in a much more cost efficient manner. And the time to delivery is going down. So this should be then converted into some kind of monetary term, because cost efficiency actually means that there is a cost saving. And time to delivery again means that because of the reduction in time to deliver, you are able to deliver much more parcels of products than what you used to do earlier. So based on using this kind of framework, we can actually come up with the actual dollar figures for this kind of soft benefits that you had access. So in this case, we have actually put down some of the key questions that you should be asking to actually go ahead and quantify the benefits. So in this case, there's a business innovation benefits part in which you can look at, since you are saying that the time to provision new resources is going down, so you need to compare it with the last year's how much time did it take on a typical basis to provision the new resources, be servers, etc. And has it gone down actually? And similarly for for your IT systems, you're saying that since the average uptime and performance is improving, how much is that improving by? And then you can have end user satisfaction surveys to look at how they're actually viewing the improved quality and performance effects. So are they really satisfied with it, or they haven't even experienced any kind of improvement? And similarly, as you said, that there will be several peak demand scenarios that you are trying to address with your cloud computing solutions. You need to look at in the past all the history and how did you effectively manage them, and now how many peak demand scenarios were you able to manage because of cloud computing. So the losses, the opportunity cost that was associated with it, you can use it as a dollar figure to associate with this particular benefit category. Similarly, in the long term, whatever we talk about in terms of the ability to provision new services, time to market, etc., that will effectively transfer in terms of the ability for customers and partners to work with you, and in terms of the satisfaction with your services and products, and that will effectively transfer into increased revenues or increased efficiency for your business. So that will be that particular part of benefits will be contributing in terms of the customer and partner benefits. In that, you look at how many new market opportunities you are able to capture because of the quick provisioning capability of cloud. So typically what used to happen earlier is that the businesses had many new projects planned, but because of the slowness of the IT approval process, they were not able to go ahead with that opportunity. So what is the business thing that because of cloud, how many new market opportunities were they able to capture because of that? And then what has been the revenue impact? How much of incremental revenues were these opportunities able to contribute? And similarly, how many opportunities could I capture for improving the collaboration with the partners and customers? So typically, I mean, in the earlier days, the partners were not able to collaborate with the organization in terms of the supply chain planning, etc. Whereas with cloud, has it opened new opportunities for that to collaborate in a better way with your partners and customers? So those benefits you need to quantify to actually measure the benefits. And then you need to compare it with whatever you had earlier promised and see if based on the roadmap you are actually able to get those kind of benefits that you had promised, so that your management can continue funding you for your further cloud initiatives. Yeah, so that is the last slide from us. So we would like to leave it open for any questions that you might have. Well, there's a question here from Tarun Singh that it is asking what is the general percentage of profit or margin using cloud services versus the legacy IT platform that you can expect. This is something that is very difficult to answer in terms of like an exact figure of you will achieve a 10% saving or something like that. The thing with legacy platform is that why do IT organizations want to migrate to the more modern platforms is that the legacy platforms are generally built on some legacy kind of code, be it like COBOL or something like that. So there are some disadvantages of having such kind of legacy applications in terms of their ability to extend the applications or in terms of making them service oriented, etc. So these are the reasons why organizations will be looking at different options, and cloud is obviously one of the options. So in this case, the benefits will be basically in terms of the reduced cost in terms of maintaining that particular application. So you need to compare that with what you are achieving with your cloud. And apart from that, there will be several software benefits as I mentioned. So that will be in terms of the ability to extend your application for new requirements, the ability to integrate with your other applications, etc. So this will again add to your overall profits or benefits that you can expect from the cloud. It's something that is very difficult to quantify in terms of like a 10% increase. So it will be on a case-to-case basis. So that's what I mean. These are some of the factors that you need to consider when you are actually comparing between a legacy IT platform and a cloud service.
Okay, there is a question from Syed. He is asking, with respect to your case like Oracle apps or JD Edwards, in what way it is useful to move to cloud, and how can we reduce the cost moving on to cloud? Any real time examples? Well, when you talk about ERPs, as we said, ERP is one of the major areas where we have good cloud adoption in terms of SaaS-based models, and the exact model or the approach on how you can adopt cloud for this, it depends upon your organization scenario. As we discussed in different through this two-part webinar, we need to build a specific strategy, and we need to work towards that strategy. And when you talk about how can we reduce the cost when doing the cloud movement, just now Samir has addressed. I mean, while we are talking about the benefits, cost is only one aspect of it. We also need to look at the other software benefits, as we have discussed in the ROI section of this webinar, and the value benefit analysis of the previous webinar. And when you talk about the specific examples, Oracle is coming big way in terms of the cloud implementations, and they have very good frameworks where they are offering services around Oracle apps in a SaaS-based model. Okay, there is a question from Manoj Kumar. He asks, what happens to my data and the ability to use it if the cloud computing company goes out of business? As I said, this is as we are talking, this is one of the bigger risks today. And while most of the time we say the business continuity is being taken care by the service provider, this is one risk of, as a part of the business continuity, which we need to think about. And today we don't have any specific models, as we are talking about the siloed model and the associated challenges. And there is another question from Manoj Kumar. Again, he asked, like, why is virtualization needed for cloud computing? Like, virtualization is a technology, or it's like a mechanism wherein what we do is we try to consolidate our physical hardware boxes. So with this, what happens is we can reduce the cost that is incurred on the space of the data center and the associated parameters like the heating, the rack space, etc., etc. So with virtualization, we take used boxes and we we create virtual hardware systems over those physical boxes. So with this, what happens is tomorrow, if you need a server, which is, let's say, I need a server for my quick application, which requires like 2 processors of some X gigahertz and some 8 GB of RAM. I can just simply quickly go and provision that particular type of logical server on any of the physical boxes depending upon the available capacity, and I can make it up and running. So this is something what we can say is some sort of service catalog. It's the service catalog in terms of hardware provisioning. Similarly, we can have the service catalogs in terms of software, or in terms of specific software services or specific storage services. So virtualization is one component that enables us to adopt cloud easily. And the virtualization is predominantly used by an organization when they're trying to build a private cloud, or by a service provider, because service providers, they always go with the scale. they will have all the socialized environment. Over this, they will be provisioning all the services that the service consumers would be subscribing to. Next question is from Syed, and he's trying to understand how secure is the data if I go for a private cloud. If two organizations use the same cloud for data backup, and if the cloud goes, so it affects the, okay. So if I'm getting the question, so I try to understand how secure is the data when it is hosted on the public cloud. Because private cloud is the scenario where the organization itself is hosting the cloud for the end business users. So where you have the IT organization have complete control over the infrastructure and the data that is hosted on it. So in private cloud, this is not a problem. But when you talk about public cloud, yes, you need to understand how secure is the data. So for that reason, in the slide deck, Samir has mentioned about the key aspects that we need to consider when we are selecting the vendor in terms of what are their current security standards and what are their business continuity processes that are in place. And when we talk about cloud going down, I mean, ideally that should not be the scenario. The basic reason why people want to go to cloud, other than the elasticity, is that availability. So for an organization, it may not be economically viable all the time that I build a lot of redundancy to maintain something like 5 nines of availability. But when you talk about a service provider, because he is working with economies of the scale and he is working with a lot of similar organizations, for him it's always a viable where he can build a lot of redundancy. And that is basically the driver for the cloud model. But service providers will be building that redundancy. And with the redundancy, there should not be any question that the cloud services are going to be down. Of course, we need to make sure that we are selecting the right vendor before we put our data in terms of whether they have all the required redundancy and the backup support required for that.
And at the same time, with the cloud provider, what happens is they typically have their data centers located across the world. So even if by any chance something like an earthquake happens at one data center location, that doesn't mean that your applications and infrastructure will stop running. So they will make sure that because of the disaster recovery and business continuity plans, they will make sure that the servers at different locations are able to take that particular load that has been just gone down. And so they will make sure that data still continues to be available. So whatever be it, so they will still make sure that the service levels that are promised, they are able to deliver in a consistent manner.
Okay, there is another question from Sajjan saying he is asking where is the data security in cloud services. Maybe if I'm getting the question right, she's trying to understand, I mean, how far cloud has evolved in terms of the data security mechanisms and all. So if that is the question, then the answer would be that data security is not specifically a challenge of the cloud, it is a general challenge in terms of data protection security. So cloud just adopts the current standards in terms of data security. So whatever that is applicable for the data that is stored in within the, in premises within the IT organization, that's going to be valid for cloud also. But apart from that, there are other scenarios that we need to think about, especially in terms of the service provider. Because you are storing the data with a specific service provider, you need to understand like what are the specific technologies that the service provider has implemented, what are the encryption levels that the service provider is supporting, what are the encryption levels that the service provider is supporting, is the data that is transferred back and forth to the service provider, is it being done on in a secure channel. These are the things we need to consider. We need to just make sure that whatever the data security mechanisms that we need or our organization mandates, they have been available and implemented by the service provider. And for this reason, these days there are a lot of security standards that are implemented, and most of the service providers are certified on those standards. We need to make sure that we are getting the right service provider with required security standard certification. Okay, there is another question from Sanjeev, and he's trying to understand how ITIL framework can be used in cloud computing. Okay, ITIL framework, I mean, it's basically a general standard in terms of service delivery and service governance. So when you talk about ITIL framework specifically for cloud computing, in respect of the cloud, the first thing is we need to understand like what are our specific service delivery models and what are the service levels that we are going to support. And from the cloud computing point of view, we need to make sure that once we move our infrastructure onto the cloud in the form of IaaS, SaaS, or PaaS, we need to make sure that the general guidelines of ITIL framework are still being properly respected. It needs to be done either by the service provider or by the internal IT organization. Because IT organization is the one which is providing services to the end user, it always going to be the responsibility of the IT organization to make sure that the service levels and other guidances have been properly taken care of, and they have to ensure that the service provider is complying to all the required measures, as we have seen in our enterprise or solution landscape, where we are talking about service delivery model, service delivery framework, and different parameters on which the organization is going to service the end users.
No, really.
And that's all the questions that we have.
All right, thank you everyone for participating in this webinar. Thanks for your time.
Okay, we can conclude the session now.
And you can contact us at this email IDs that you have mentioned if you have any questions.
Thanks Mr. Shankar and Mr. Samir for your informative session on cloud implementation scenarios for enterprise. It was indeed an enlightening session. I would also like to thank our participants for their support in making this webinar a huge success. The recording of this webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. Gentlemen, the next session in the TechGig webinar series is happening tomorrow, that is Friday, 3rd January, February at 5 p.m. Topic for the webinar will be intellectual property and its growing significance to tech startups and IT companies. We will be having Mr. Tarun Khurana, partner and patent attorney at Khurana & Khurana, advocates and IP attorneys as our guest speaker. Gentlemen, we are also pleased to announce that TechGig.com has partnered with PMI Pune Tech Chapter. On 5th February, that Sunday, TechGig.com, in association with PMI Pune, will present a National Project Management Conference. Watch this conference live on TechGig on 5th February from 9 a.m. onwards. Thank you.